My name is Laurel James. I'm 35 years old. And 2 months ago, I walked into a courtroom in Atlanta that I hadn't seen in over 15 years. My sister sat at the defendant's table, a once untouchable district attorney now facing federal indictment, and all I did was sit in the back row, quiet, present, and enough. The judge looked up, squinted a little, and said, "Is that Governor Laurel James?" Just like that, my name cracked open the room, like a match to a room soaked in gasoline. My sister Carly turned and locked eyes with me, face gone pale. And my father, Alan James, just leaned forward as if trying to recognize the ghost of someone he'd buried long ago. But let me take you back to the last time we sat at a table together. I was 19. It was supposed to be Sunday dinner. Pot roast, mashed potatoes, green beans with that heavy layer of bacon grease the way Mom always made them. The table was set. Crystal glasses, cloth napkins, a performance of family, and then it was canceled. I didn't know why at first. Until my phone lit up texts from friends, then voicemails. One link after another. Someone had uploaded it, a video. Grainy, stolen intimate. Me, spring break age 18 with a boy I thought loved me. He didn't. He kept the footage. And when I broke it off, he released it like it was his revenge album. Carly found it first. I know that now. She was the one who forwarded it to our father with 6 words that tore everything open. "You need to act before this gets worse." Worse for who? That night, Alan didn't say much. Just marched into my room, red-faced phone, clenched like a badge. He didn't ask if I was okay. He didn't ask who did it. He said, "You think we raised you to be broadcast like a slut." Then he threw my college diploma on the bed like junk mail. "You want to live like trash? Do it without my name, my roof, or my money." My mom stood by the doorway, rosary in hand. Silent, not even a whisper. I turned to Carly, maybe hoping for a flicker of the girl I once built pillow forts with, but her eyes were glass. No expression, not even pity. That was the night the dinner never happened. The table stayed perfectly set. But no one ate. No one even acknowledged it. Before I can continue my story, take a moment to like the video and subscribe, but only if you genuinely enjoy what I do here. Drop a comment and tell me where you're watching from and what time it is right now. I love seeing how far these stories travel. Now dim the lights, maybe turn on a fan for that soft background hum, and let's ease into tonight's journey together. Our family always looked good from the outside. Christmas cards with matching sweaters, church on Sundays, Carly winning debate trophies, me with my sketchbooks. We looked like a Southern postcard. But behind the photos was something brittle. Everything had to be polished, controlled. Any mess, any deviation was a threat. And I was the mess. I didn't study law. I didn't join student council. I painted. I questioned things. I cried at weird times and wore black to Thanksgiving. I wasn't broken. I just didn't fit into their script. When that video leaked, I think they felt relief. Like they finally had permission to let go of the daughter who never played her part. So I packed my things. A couple outfits, my red backpack sketchbooks, and the framed picture I kept of my 10th birthday. The last one where my dad actually smiled at me. I didn't know where I was going, just away. My mom left a duffel bag on the porch. No note. The locks were changed before sunrise. I used to love my last name, James. It sounded clean, solid. The kind of name that looked good on a plaque. Laurel James felt like it could belong to someone, a novelist, a teacher, even a gallery owner. But after that night, it stopped being my name and became their weapon. A brand I'd burned. A scar that followed me everywhere. It wasn't just the video. It was how fast they erased me. Like I was never part of their story. My phone stopped ringing. My church friends ghosted me. Even my Aunt Melissa, who used to braid my hair at cookouts, unfriended me and told my cousin to pray for Laurel's spirit. I became a cautionary tale before I'd even caught my breath. Carly gave an interview that week. Local paper. She didn't mention me by name, but she said the choices of certain individuals within a family can have widespread consequences. That's why values and discipline must come first. That was about me. That was a public gut punch in pearls. I didn't respond. What could I say that wouldn't make it worse? Alan blocked my number. My mother didn't. But she never replied. Never called. Just let the silence stack up like voicemails in a full inbox. I slept in my friend Kaylee's Corolla for 2 nights. She didn't know. She just thought I was crashing with someone else. I'd sneak into the back seat after she went to bed park 3 blocks down and curl up under a jacket that still smelled like her vanilla body spray. My stomach growled so loud, I worried it would wake the whole street. On the third night, I looked at myself in the rearview mirror and barely recognized the girl staring back. I had this swollen face from crying my eyeliner smeared like bruises. I thought, if this is rock bottom, at least there's no further to fall. But I was wrong. I had one more moment to live through before I started over. That next morning, I took a Greyhound north. I didn't tell anyone, not even Kaylee. I left her $20 under her windshield wiper and a note that just said, "Thanks, I'll be okay." The bus was half empty. I sat near the back, headphones in, but no music playing. Just needed the illusion of silence. A woman across the aisle asked where I was headed. I said Asheville because it sounded far enough without being cold. I didn't know a single person there. That was the point. We stopped overnight near Greenville. Somewhere off the highway, I climbed out needing air. There was an overpass, empty, quiet, just me and a duffel bag. I took out an old leather-bound notebook, the one my mom used to write recipes in. It still smelled like cinnamon. Inside were notes she used to tuck into my lunchboxes. Little hearts. God's got you. That sort of thing. I tore out each page one by one. Hands trembling. Eyes dry for once. I fed them into a small fire made of twigs and napkins I'd stuffed into my coat pocket. The flames danced fast, small and hungry. They didn't ask for permission. They just consumed. When the last page was ash, I stood back watching the wind carry parts of my past across the lot. Then I said out loud, "I'm not coming back." It wasn't a declaration, it was a release, because sometimes a name isn't a badge, it's a weight, and I had to set it down to breathe. The morning after the fire, I woke up with ash under my fingernails, and the kind of cold that wraps around your ribs like a locked jaw. The bus pulled into Asheville just past 7 a.m. Fog clung to the windows like smoke. Everything was wet, like the sky had forgotten how to hold its water. I had $42, a red backpack, and no plan. It's funny what you notice when you're stripped down to the basics. The way coffee smells even through the vents of a diner. How exhaust from a city bus makes your eyes sting. That wet denim ache when you've worn the same jeans for 3 days straight. My whole body itched with what I'd left behind, and what I hadn't figured out yet. Asheville didn't care who I used to be. That's what saved me. I found a room to rent above a pawn shop on the south side, bare mattress, one flickering ceiling bulb, and a window that didn't lock. The guy who managed it looked me up and down like I was either prey or someone he once loved and forgot. "You late on rent, you're out," he said. Fair. I got a job waiting tables at a breakfast joint on Haywood. Flapjacks, grits, $5 tips if you smiled right. I lied and said my name was Laurel J. No one asked for my ID. At night, I picked up a second gig cleaning at a free clinic. Mopping up pediatric exam rooms, spraying disinfectant on walls that still held faint outlines of tiny handprints. I liked that job more than the diner. No one talked to me. Just me, the hum of the floor buffer, and the occasional stack of unpaid medical bills someone left in the trash. The silence was warm. Not the kind that punished you, the kind you get to choose. Then came that night. It was close to 11 p.m. I was halfway through wiping down the main hallway when I heard shouting. Spanish. Sharp. Scared. I stepped out of the supply closet and saw a young woman, maybe 30, with a toddler on her hip. An officer stood over her with papers in hand. "It's already processed," he barked. "Just sign." She didn't understand. Or maybe she did, but fear froze her into stillness. I stepped in before I knew what I was doing. "She's not signing," I said. My voice cracked, but I didn't back down. The officer narrowed his eyes. "Who the hell are you?" "She's not signing," I repeated louder this time. "This form's outdated. Invalid. You can't process this here." It was a lie. I had no clue what the form said. He scowled, muttered something under his breath, and left. The woman collapsed into tears. The child buried her face in her mother's coat. Later, I expected to be fired. Instead, I got called into a tiny break room by a man in a flannel jacket. Jordan McCall, director of a nonprofit that helped undocumented families. "You ever think about using your voice for more than mopping floors?" he asked. I just looked at him and said, I don't have anything left to lose. He smiled. That's exactly why you'll be good at this. That was the first day someone saw me not as damage, but as direction. Asheville had this way of letting you exist without demanding explanations. Nobody cared who your father was, or what family name you carried, or what scandal had chased you here. The city was small enough to feel personal, but wide enough to hide in. That combination kept me breathing. I started at Safe Steps NC the very next Monday. Entry level. Technically still part-time cleaning, but I now had a desk metal scratched, shoved in the corner of a converted storage room. My job was supposed to be clerical, filing forms, scheduling appointments, picking up sandwiches for meetings I wasn't invited to. But I paid attention. Jordan talked fast, worked faster. The walls of his office were lined with post-it notes and manila folders bursting at the seams. One day, I asked if I could stay after hours to reorganize the intake cabinet. He nodded, distracted, but grateful. I stayed 3 hours past closing, built a color-coded system, and left a labeled spreadsheet on his desk. Next morning, he slid a black coffee across my desk and said, "You want to come to a city planning meeting with me?" That's how it started. Once a week became twice. Then every day. I was still mopping floors in the evenings, but during the day, I was learning how policy worked, how local laws formed, how funding flowed, how language could protect or erase depending on who used it. At night, I took online courses. Nothing fancy, just community college classes on municipal code, immigration law, nonprofit finance. I had no degree plan, no advisor, just curiosity and hunger. By year 2, I drafted my first grant proposal. It was rough, clunky, overly formal, but Jordan cleaned it up and submitted it. We got the funding. That summer, I traded in my red backpack for a used leather satchel I found at a thrift store. I cut my hair short again, not out of crisis this time, but clarity. I was done apologizing for who I used to be. I just wanted to keep going. One night, Jordan asked me, "What did you do before all this?" I paused. "Too long." "Doesn't matter," he said. "You're here now." I didn't tell him that I used to be a daughter, a sister, a name whispered in shame at church picnics. I didn't tell him that I'd once stood in front of a mirror trying to decide if I could keep living with no one claiming me. Because in Asheville, I didn't need to explain. That fall, we won a city contract to provide legal support for displaced families. I coordinated every moving part, staffing, budgeting, outreach. My name went on the last page of the proposal, but I didn't care. I knew it was mine. People started calling me Miss James again, only this time it didn't sting. Still, I kept a line in my head like a fence post. Don't get too loud, don't get seen. They can't hurt what they can't find. But fate has a funny way of ignoring fences. 3 years after I left Savannah, I walked into a wood-paneled city chamber to speak on behalf of a single mother facing eviction. Her kids waited outside, holding a lunchbox between them like a peace offering. And that night, for the first time, I cried. Not because I was broken, but because I'd done something that mattered. Quietly, entirely, and no one had to know where I came from. Power isn't loud. Not the kind that lasts. Real power is written in the margins, tucked inside, grant budgets slipped into policy memos, whispered in rooms where your name isn't on the door, but your fingerprints are all over the outcome. I learned that not in a classroom, but in City Hall conference rooms that smelled like old coffee and quiet regret. By the 4th year at Safe Steps, I wasn't just organizing files or shadowing meetings, I was leading them. My name still wasn't on the front page of anything, but people started asking for me by name. Laurel. Never Laurel James. Just Laurel. I had created a life that functioned without the weight of my past, and maybe that's why it worked. I stopped trying to be known. I focused on being useful. We built emergency housing programs, rewrote shelter intake policies, pushed back against city officials who wanted to cooperate with ICE. I'd sit in meetings with men in buttoned-up blazers who'd glance at me like I was the assistant until I spoke. The first time I quoted the Fourth Amendment in a funding negotiation, the room went silent. I didn't shout. I didn't even raise my voice. I just said, "You can't call it protection if it begins with fear." I'd never seen a grown man blink that fast. I spent weekends auditing immigration court transcripts, circling phrases judges used again and again, language that criminalized poverty, that framed mothers as burdens, fathers as threats, children as leverage. I highlighted them all. Red for dehumanization, blue for bias, yellow for loopholes. One day, I walked into Jordan's office and dropped a file on his desk. If we change the intake phrasing on Form 118B, we can legally delay ICE processing by 48 hours. He looked at me like I'd just grown wings. I wasn't a lawyer. I didn't have a JD or a trust fund or a family name that opened doors. But I had time, and no one calling me home. I started drafting my own forms, modified the language, shortened the sentences, simplified every piece of red tape I could. I figured if I couldn't be powerful, I could at least make it easier for someone else to survive. One night, after a particularly brutal day, ICE had taken a 19-year-old from his job at a gas station. I stayed late at the office, rereading everything I'd written over the past 2 years. Pages and pages of notes drafts, scanned IDs, testimonies. And I realized I had built something. Not loud, not branded, but real. I looked up at the whiteboard where I'd written a quote months ago, half out of impulse, half out of spite. They erased me, so I made myself permanent. Aw, taste. That was the night I opened a new document and typed 6 words. James is just what they called me. The next day, Jordan asked if I'd ever consider running for office. I laughed, out loud. He didn't. Not for the title, he said. For the people who've never had anyone like you represent them. I told him I wasn't ready. Not yet. He nodded. Then let's get you ready. And just like that, a window I never thought I deserved cracked open. Quietly, like it had always been waiting for me. The news broke on a Friday. Headline on the Atlanta Tribune's website, District Attorney Laurel James, accused of evidence tampering in immigration case. I was sitting in my office in downtown Asheville, sipping coffee that had long since gone cold, when Emily, my assistant, knocked once and entered without waiting. You're going to want to see this, she said, sliding her phone across my desk. I didn't touch it, just stared at the screen. My sister's face framed perfectly in courtroom lighting. The same lips that once called me an embarrassment, now tightly pressed as she exited the courthouse. Her eyes were obscured by sunglasses, but I knew the expression by heart-controlled panic. We were built in the same house, after all. Everyone in my office was buzzing. Press releases were being drafted. Staffers whispering in corners. Someone from my comms team said, "We recommend neutrality, Governor. No comment. No statement. Keep this from bleeding into your administration." I nodded, but my mind was already elsewhere. In a courthouse, in a pew, in a shadow that had waited 15 years. I booked the flight under the name LJ. No security detail, no press announcement, just a carry-on and a quiet seat in row 17. When I landed in Atlanta, the air felt thicker, like memory had a weight and it clung to everything. I didn't stay in a hotel downtown. I picked a cheap one by the old train station. It smelled like bleach and burnt toast. I didn't mind. The next morning, I walked into the courthouse an hour before proceedings began. Wore dark slacks, a plain coat, sunglasses. Sat in the very last row. Same spot where parents sit when they don't want to admit their kid's in trouble. Same place I imagined my mother sat the day they disowned me. Carly was already there. Her suit was immaculate. She never missed a detail. Her posture screamed unbothered. But her fingers, she kept folding and unfolding a paper napkin. That was her tell. She used to do the same thing at church when she knew she was going to get scolded afterward. Then the judge entered, Noelle Grant. She was one of the speakers at a governor's summit 2 years ago. Brilliant, blistering black-robed thunder in heels. She'd looked me in the eye back then and said, "If you ever decide to run federally, let me know. We need more of you." Now she scanned the courtroom, paused, and narrowed her gaze. "Is that Governor Laurel James?" Every head turned. I felt it like a gust of heat. Reporters scrambled, phones lifted, cameras clicked. Carly turned. Her face went slack. I didn't smile. I didn't wave. I just held her gaze for 3 slow breaths. My mother sat behind her, a rosary in her lap. Her hand flew to her mouth. I saw her whisper something, maybe a prayer, maybe my name. And my father leaned forward confused, as if he were seeing the dead. I didn't move, didn't flinch. I didn't come to save anyone, I came to witness. That courtroom had once been their fortress. Now it was mine. The trial made headlines. My name made them explode. Suddenly, I wasn't just a governor with a quiet record and a solid reform agenda. I was the estranged sister of a disgraced prosecutor. Every outlet had a different version. The silent sister returns, the real James' daughter. From shame to Senate hopeful. They slapped my face onto thumbnails with stock images of gavels and caution tape. None of them asked for my permission. But the thing that hurt, the thing that hollowed me out, wasn't the noise. It was the video. The old one. Grainy, pixelated, but unmistakable. Someone dug it up, posted it, again. Maybe thinking they could undo me with it. It spread faster than the first time. It was shared on social platforms, embedded in, before they were famous reels, even played muted, of course, on a panel discussion about political morality. I watched it in my office, alone. Emily had tried to stop me. We can issue a takedown. We'll file a cease and desist. No, I said. Let them look. She stared at me like I'd grown horns. I survived being seen before I added. This won't kill me. It already didn't. My staff scrambled. PR teams drafted neutral statements. Lawyers sent warning letters. But I said no interviews, no commentary, no posts. I wasn't going to flinch this time. That part of me was gone. Then my phone rang. Caller ID, Alan James? I let it buzz twice before answering. His voice was sharp, controlled. You're using our name to make yourself famous, I let him speak. You're dragging our legacy through the mud. I cut him off. I've carried that name longer than you ever carried me. Silence. Then he hung up. The next morning, a text from my cousin in Atlanta. My mother had been rushed to the hospital. Blood pressure spike. Stress-related, they said. I sat with it for 5 minutes. Then I booked a red-eye. The hospital smelled like overripe bananas and disinfectant. She looked so small in that bed. Her hair thinner than I remembered. She opened her eyes slowly and whispered, Laurel. Not with anger, not with shame. Just my name. If what they say is true, she murmured, then I have spent years not seeing you. She cried, I didn't. I held her hand, not like a daughter seeking forgiveness, but like a person holding space for someone who had no more words. Before I left, I pulled something from my bag. A small canvas I'd painted months ago. A silhouette of a woman standing in an empty field. Her shadow stretched impossibly long behind her. The title on the back read Witness. I set it on the nightstand and walked out. Back in Asheville, there was another envelope waiting. No return address. Inside screenshots. The old video again. Some emails I hadn't seen in years. Private conversations. Even a photo of me crying outside the shelter in my first year here. It wasn't random. And then a call came from Ben Cohen, an old friend now in the Justice Department. You didn't hear this from me, he said. But your father's been asking around. Background checks. Looking for leverage. A threat wrapped in family paper. That night, I lit a candle, opened my desk drawer, and pulled out a letter I had written months earlier. A plea for clemency. One I'd considered sending to the federal prosecutor back when some foolish part of me thought Carly might still be saved. I held it over the flame, watched the words disappear, and then I began writing something else. A bill, one that would change everything. I called it the Legacy Accountability Act. The title was bland on purpose, dry enough to slip under radar, precise enough to do damage. At its core, the bill would criminalize attempts to use family ties, past romantic relationships, or private history to pressure blackmail or silence public officials, whistleblowers, or reform advocates. It wasn't flashy, but it was fire camouflaged as ink. I pitched it to the legislative committee with no preamble, no tears, just facts. This bill, I said, is for anyone who has ever been told that their silence protects the family more than their truth ever could. A few members blinked. One older man said, "Sounds personal." I looked him straight in the eye. It is. The press exploded again. Governor James introduces bill protecting officials from family coercion. Is this the end of the political dynasty era? The headlines didn't matter. The survivors who emailed me did. But it didn't take long before Carly found her way back into the frame. Or rather, to my doorstep. It was a rainy Thursday, mid-afternoon. Emily came in pale and stiff. "She's downstairs," she said. "Alone, No security, no appointment. I paused for a full 10 seconds. Send her up. Carly walked in slowly. No makeup, plain jeans, hair pulled back like we were kids again. She looked hollowed out. Not from sleep, but from being devoured by something you can't quite name. I don't want to waste your time, she said, voice like gravel. I just needed to tell you something before this all ends. I leaned back silent. I ruined what we could have had, she whispered. Before I even realized I was jealous of you. She didn't cry, but she was close. I don't want to go to prison, but I'm not asking you to fix it. She stopped herself. I just wanted you to know that I remember. That day. The video. I was the one who sent it to Dad. I said it was for the family, but it was about me. I stayed quiet. You didn't destroy me, Carly, I said, even and calm. You just forgot I existed. And when someone's forgotten long enough, they learn how to become unforgettable. She looked away. Mom thinks you'll save me, she said finally. I walked to the window. The city moved like a slow river outside. Gray skies. No wind. I'm not here to save anyone, I said. I saved myself so no one could drown me again. Carly nodded, then stood. Her fingers grazed the edge of my desk. She saw it. A page half hidden under a folder. The same clemency letter I had burned days before. A copy I'd printed but never signed. She didn't touch it. She didn't say goodbye. When the door clicked shut behind her, I exhaled. Not because I was relieved, but because something final had settled. We were no longer sisters playing out a lifetime of roles. We were two women with history like a cliff between us, and I had chosen not to cross. Later that night, I finalized the language on the bill. Every clause, every footnote, every quiet revolution embedded into legal code. Because if they were going to remember my name now, it wouldn't be for how I left. It would be for how I stayed. It was a Friday evening when the text came. My mother again. Just 5 words. Come home for dinner. Please. I stared at the screen long enough for the sun to drop behind the mountains and leave my office painted in shadow. Then another message, this time from Alan. We need to talk. 15 years. That's how long it took for them to remember my number. I didn't reply. Not right away. But something inside me softened or cracked or maybe just sighed. And that part of me said, go. See what they think this is. So I went. The house in Savannah looked smaller than I remembered. Or maybe I was just taller. The porch still creaked on the 3rd step. The same cross hung above the doorway. Inside, everything was immaculate. Not warm, just polished. Like the place was holding its breath. My mother opened the door with a watery smile. You look older, she said, like it was both compliment and confession. Alan was in the dining room, starched shirt, clean shave. He offered a nod. Not warmth, just acknowledgement. And then there was Carly, already seated at the table. Same posture, same eyes, but no spark. Just a woman sitting in the ruins of a story she built too tall. There was a seat for me, the same one I always sat in as a kid. They'd reupholstered it, new leather, new stitches. But I knew every crack under the shine. Dinner was elaborate. Enchiladas, fresh tortillas, that sweet corn pudding my mom used to make only on holidays. Wine sat in the middle, unopened. We ate in silence at first. Then small talk. My mother asked if I remembered how I used to draw on napkins during dinner. Alan said he'd read one of my recent speeches. Impressive, he said, as if grading a term paper. Eventually, Carly broke. I know I messed up, she said. Her voice barely above a whisper. I didn't think it would go this far. There it was. Not an apology, just a crack in the veneer. Then my mother reached for my hand, stopped short. We were thinking, she began, maybe you could speak to the federal prosecutor. Not officially, just a letter, a few words. Help family. I put my fork down. Slowly. The sound echoed like a stone in a chapel. If I weren't the governor, I asked, looking at each of them, would I still be your blood? They didn't answer. Because we all knew the answer. I stood. The leather chair squeaked beneath me. I kept your name, I said. But I built my life without you in it. Alan's jaw clenched, but he said nothing. Carly looked away. My mother's eyes welled up, but I didn't flinch. Enjoy dinner, I said. I stepped outside into the Savannah night, heavy, humid, alive with cicadas and the scent of lemon oil. The same porch light that had once flickered behind me as I left with nothing now lit my path away again. But this time I wasn't running. I was returning to myself. The headlines didn't stop. Not after I walked out. Not after I refused to play their game. But for the first time, I didn't read them. I didn't need to. The silence I left in that dining room was louder than any front-page story. Back in Asheville, the city moved on. Bills were debated. Streets got repaved. Families kept arriving at safe steps holding torn folders and quiet hope. The world didn't pause just because my family tried to hit rewind, and I didn't pause either. A few weeks later, I stood in a community center off Merriman Avenue. Nothing fancy. Fluorescent lights, 40 folding chairs, a coffee table with a half-eaten tray of mini muffins. No cameras, no press. Just locals, activists, young organizers hoping to hear from someone who'd built power without selling their soul. There was no introduction, just chalk on a whiteboard behind me. Ruthless leadership. People ask me all the time, "How did you make it without family support?" I told them the truth. I didn't make it. I just stopped waiting for them. A few people laughed. The kind of laugh that leaks pain. "We don't choose our blood," I said. "But we do choose what legacies we carry and which ones we lay down." Near the back I saw him. Alan. No suit. Just a gray button-up sleeves rolled. He stood near the door, arms crossed, not like a guard, but like someone trying to remember how to be still. I didn't look away, but I didn't stop either. I kept talking about policy, about grit, about how real leadership isn't polished. It's layered in mistakes, forged in silence, tempered by shame you don't let win. I told them about bills that weren't glamorous but necessary, about learning the language of power so it couldn't be used to erase people like me. When it ended, the applause was soft but real. People started gathering their coats. I thanked volunteers, hugged an old woman who reminded me of someone I once tried to become. And when the crowd thinned, Alan stepped forward. He didn't ask to hug me. He didn't offer excuses. He just stood in front of the podium I'd left behind and said I never understood my daughter. Not really. But today, I realized maybe I don't have to. Maybe all I need to do is admit. She did what I never could. He didn't look at me for permission. He just said I see her now. And that was it. No apology. No revision of the past. Just that. I didn't cry. I didn't reach for him. But I bowed my head just slightly. Not surrender, not forgiveness. Peace. Outside, the first flakes of snow had started falling. Asheville in winter is soft like the city itself exhales. I stepped out, pulled my coat close, and watched a group of children chase each other across the park nearby. Their laughter rose in bursts. I walked through that hush with no one beside me. And I wasn't lonely, because I had become someone who didn't need to be remembered. To keep doing what no one else dared to. Sometimes the people who were supposed to love you will only love the version of you they can control. And when you become someone they can't own, they will call it betrayal. But it's not. It's survival. And sometimes survival is the bravest legacy you can leave behind. What about you? What did you have to walk away from to finally breathe? Tell me your story in the comments. I read every single one. And if this one hit somewhere deep, share it. Someone else might need the permission you just gave yourself. Thank you for listening, for staying, for feeling this with me. Until next time, take care of that soft part of you. It's the strongest thing you've got.